receiver, and, I'm sure you already know what happens next anyways. Here's the ball down the sideline, and caught! After doing it has been determined that the receiver did not maintain. Did he catch it? Did he not?
He does caught that bitch, bro.
But what is known is that Aaron Rodgers was still on the other side of the ball with plenty of time left. So even if Dez's catch had been ruled a touchdown, who knows what could have happened after that imaginary play? And Tony Romo was forced to watch from the sidelines.
Fine, we'll tank. Wait, hold
26 to 21.
I don't know what we're gonna take for, but we're gonna take for someone else. We don't need a Michael Jordan. We don't need Michael Jordan.
This Dallas team was probably way closer to reaching the Super Bowl than any other team before it, as waiting for them in the NFC Championship game, if Dallas would have been victorious, was the Seattle Seahawks. And as history has proven, they were capable of matching up with and even beating Seattle on the road earlier this season. So yeah, hypothetically, maybe if a few balls rolled differently, the Cowboys would have been in the Super Bowl. But that's all hypothetical. At the end of the day, this was just a tough loss. But, whatever. As long as Tony Romo just doesn't take up yoga and hurt his back any more than it already is, and Jerry can, stop being Jerry, the Cowboys should have no problem running it back to be
Chair John Jesus offensive little people turns for little people.
Or, in a very similar situation as their 2010 season, the Cowboys had a horrible hangover, and eventually, greed and overuse of Tony Romo came to a boiling point, as Tony's career in Dallas looked like it was up in the air after 2 more injuries in this season alone. First fracturing his collarbone and his non-throwing shoulder against the Eagles, and then right after getting out of the hospital bed, went right back into war and broke his clavicle against the Panthers. And of course, without Romo playing, instead the Cowboys were, of course, led by a combination of first-ballot Hall of Famers, and tack on DeMarco Murray signing with the Eagles before the year, and Dez Bryant breaking a bone in his foot in the first game of the season, and what you get is a perfect recipe for a stinky 4-12 campaign. The worst the Cowboys have regurgitated out since Jimmy Johnson's first...
Shit, no, I'm still watching that.
First year with the team back in 1989. This season didn't really have much to it. Basically, everyone was just injured, and hell, even Jerry Jones found himself on IR with the daunting hip replacement surgery. But that doesn't mean it was all dark and gloomy. At least Dallas's O-line was still elite, and because of their impressive level of suckitude, the Cowboys held the 4th overall pick in the 2016 NFL Draft.
Holy people, fuck.
To send in that pick, if history's shown us anything, Jerry Jones loves his playmakers and filled the hole that DeMarco Murray left behind and selected Ohio State's Ezekiel Elliott. And then
he was only good with the line.
At least the second-best quarterback in the 2016 class fall right into their laps with Mississippi State's
sure he'll get to that.
Prescott. So with more new blood coming in and the Cowboys' cycle of finding a random quarterback later in the draft that everyone overlooks repeating itself, all looked well. But then the cycle was instantly accelerated when one of the main characters of this tragedy was killed off. When Tony Romo went down in preseason with the final back injury of his career that allowed his backup to take the reins. With Romo down and becoming the new Drew Bledsoe, the narrative completely did a 180 for the Cowboys. From a team that had possible Super Bowl aspirations to, well, honestly, maybe we should just strap up and let the tank run its course. But almost right out of the gate, the Cowboys somehow were led by, for my money, the most impressive rookie quarterback running back duo in the modern era in Dak and Zeke, led the Cowboys to a 13-win season. Let me repeat that. In a season where the Dallas Cowboys were expected to do absolutely nothing, they won 13 games. And although most people at the time were pretty accepting of the new guys gelling with the old, things became a little bit more complicated when on November 11th, coming back in a cyborg suit, Tony Romo was medically cleared to play, but the coaches still decided it was best for the team to stick with Dakota Prescott. And obviously, there was no sensible human who truly believed Dak should be benched in the middle of this season, as long as Dallas had success. But as more teams adjusted to Dak's skill set and got film on him, from weeks 12 through 15, Dak very noticeably slowed down, with his numbers going down across the board from where they were just a few weeks ago. And with the Cowboys losing a game, the murmurings kept creeping into Jerry's head, telling him to give Tony Romo one more chance. Still, though, things would have had to get really bad for Tony to ever make an appearance with the blue star in his head ever again. And after a perfect performance to clinch a bye versus the Lions in Week 16, Dak Prescott, Zeke, the O-line, and a still strong defense enjoyed their bye week, didn't go to Cabo, and waited to see who their opponent was. And as they waited, once the final buzzer sounded between their two potential opponents, Jerry Jones had an episode.
Packers win 38-13. After review, it has been determined that the receiver did not maintain.
Uh-oh, that Rodgers guy is back, and all before the game, it seemed like the curse really got a hold of Jerry, as the man was battling spirits and things of that nature all week long, leading up to the Cowboys' first playoff game since the Dez Bryant DeMarco Murray incident. It was as if Jerry didn't want to say anything, but deep down, he knew the Cowboys had no chance. He knew he gave away any opportunity to make a Super Bowl to the football deity all those years ago. And as the divisional game began, Jerry was forced to watch the young Cowboys struggle with the bright lights, and just maybe a singular thought may have crossed his mind, and even ironically, announcer Troy Aikman may have thought the same exact thing.
Yeah, but you wonder as they go into the second half, there's no question that Romo gives them an opportunity for more big plays.
If the struggling continued for Dallas, maybe trying your luck at a potential spark plug was the Cowboys' best option. But seemingly as quickly as that idea could have been mildly plausible, it was dismissed, with Dak going into the Zen mode, finding Dez Bryant, and eventually with the help of the defense led by guys like Sean Lee and Barry Church, and they truly shut down the Tony Romo narrative forever, tying the game at 28 apiece. Next thing you know, Jerry is pacing back and forth, sweating buckets, watching as both quarterbacks continue to ball out.
Why are people just running around with knives, bro?
Nailed shots to tie the game at 31 now. So this was it. The final drive for the Packers. All the Cowboys had to do was stop one 3rd and 20 conversion. But didn't happen. Take a long look, Cowboys fans. Really let it set in. This happened because Jerry's ancestral stench was just too strong, and Rodgers did the thing with the thing and created a core memory for Dallas fans everywhere, sending the Cowboys home in a 34-31 thrilling matchup in Jerry World. Once again, more heartbreak and even more chest pain would come when the Dallas Cowboys parted ways with Tony Romo forever, as the man who saved the Cowboys from quarterback purgatory would officially never return to action. Then, once the season began, the Cowboys started out fine, I guess, but looking like nowhere near their dominant selves from just last year. And then, things truly were derailed for the rest of the season when Jerry Jones and Zeke lost his legal battle versus Roger, when Ezekiel Elliott was suspended for 6 games, and without the Ewoks' presence, Dallas went 9-7 and missed the playoffs. At this point, history was just comically repeating itself, starting the offseason off with Dez Bryant, another semi-controversial but still productive receiver, like one Terrell Owens who came before him, found himself kicked to the curb after a meeting with Jerry Jones and his flesh puppet Jason Garrett. And of course, Dez was pissed after he lost his job, going to Twitter to rant about the Cowboys' awful play calling, something that I'm sure Terrell Owens would have had no problem doing at the time if Twitter was, a thing. Once again, from 2018 through 2020, the Cowboys rinsed and repeated, proving they were still a good team at best and mediocre at worst, as the main headlines to report from this time skip was Dallas winning a playoff game versus the Seahawks in 2018, which was sort of cool, but who cares? And Travis Frederick retiring from the NFL after the 2019 season, and Dak Prescott missing almost the entire 2020 year with a compound fracture. But besides that, there's nothing too special to report from these seasons, with once more the Cowboys proving that they were the best at being mid. Which takes us to the beginning of the 2021 season, where at this point we're looking at a version of Jerry Jones that has to search deep within his soul to find a compelling reason to keep going. But a Dallas team that has remained similar, with Dak and Zeke still being the core of the offense, the O-line still being led by Zach Martin and Tyron Smith, and the defense, as always, being led by a combination of young guys and veterans. And speaking of young guys, say what you want, but if the Cowboys can do one thing right, most of the time, it's find and draft talent. As in both 2020 and 21, the Cowboys nailed both of their first-round picks, drafting a perennial Pro Bowl receiver and Dez replacement in CeeDee Lamb, and one of the best rookies and defensive players we've ever seen so early on in Micah Parsons. But besides the draft, by far the two biggest moves Dallas made was the hiring of new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore and D coordinator Dan Quinn. But then, after all these years, Jerry finally pulled the trigger, firing one of the few men to master the art of the 8-8 season in Jason Garrett. And now with his puppet gone, Jerry then turned around and hired former Packers coach Mike McCarthy. You sure about that,
He said
Jerry?
Mike McCarthy?
He might, unintentionally kick the old PTSD back into full force, but it's probably worth the risk. And as the 2021 year unfolded, be it because Dak took a leap after his injury or Kellen Moore really elevated the offensive play, this year's Dallas team became every analytical guy's wet dream as they finished the season with the highest scoring offense in the NFL, averaging a monstrous 30.4 points per game, and pairing that with an elite defense led to all DVOA metrics naming this 2021 Cowboys team as, statistically speaking, the best team Dallas had fielded
This
since
is the game.
1995.
Fuck.
So, led by their supercharged offense and rejuvenated defense, Jerry's boys went 12-5, and once again had another home playoff game to try and capitalize on a season where expectations were actually laid out for them. And who would be waiting for them than none other than the team that arguably started it all? Way back before Jerry Jones gave up the right to the deed of his soul in the 1981 season, Dallas lost a 12-win year to the San Francisco 49ers on a play you may have heard murmurings of called the catch. And even going back to the times in the 90s where these two teams effectively played in the Super Bowl every time they met, there was real hatred between these two organizations. So with that little history lesson out of the way, what you get is some obvious negative voodoo going on with the Cowboys. But honestly, going into this game, Jerry probably didn't even care. He must have been happy that the Cowboys were even remotely good again. And now that the boys were making him some more money, that's all he needed. So maybe when the 49ers came out and punched the Cowboys straight in the mouth, controlling the pace in the process, there's a chance Jerry didn't even feel anything anymore. But just like that Packers game in 2016, although the Cowboys seemingly always start slow, they battle back, and after a Jimmy Garoppolo interception and a Dak rushing touchdown with 2 minutes on the clock, trailing by just 6 points at home, Prescott and the Cowboys had a chance at completing a potential legacy drive. But they blew it. The 49ers defense clamped up, and I guess for more comedy, the 49ers decided to piss their drive away and have the ball go straight back to Dallas, and instantly allowed the worst possible play, with the boys pulling off a cute little lateral thing, getting out of bounds. You know the drill. Dallas had no timeouts, so every play had to go to the sideline. So with 14 seconds left, QB draw. The Cowboys decided to run a quarterback draw up the middle when they needed a touchdown. And although I'm not entirely sure what the end goal here was, once again, ironically, Tony Romo, the announcer of this game, pointed out that Dak screwed it up by not immediately finding the ref to have him spot the ball, sacrificing valuable seconds in the process. I mean, do you expect anything less from the Cowboys at this point, though?
No.
And after that meltdown versus the 49ers, 2022 was pretty much the exact same season. Same head
First of
coach,
many.
same coordinators, Dak and Zeke on offense,
Oh, no,
and
it's the
now
Packers,
CeeDee
never
Lamb
mind.
was helping to run the show. The only real difference from the 2021 roster was Amari Cooper signing up for purgatory and the defense getting marginally better with experience. Other than that, exact same team, same exact record of 12-5. But this time, because the NFC East division was much more competitive than in years past, the Cowboys were forced to play in the wild card and humored the one and only Thomas Brady as the Cowboys flexed what this team's full potential could be, with the defense showing complete dominance, while Dak Prescott was diving up everything in sight, playing a near flawless football game. Okay, nice. So the Cowboys got a little playoff win under their belt, which should give them some confidence against their divisional round opponent, who is the 49ers.
Bro.
Again, same team, different
shut up.
place. And for the second year in a row, the Cowboys were favored to win. But if you're this far into the video and think the Cowboys follow the laws of logic, then I clearly haven't done a good job at being a YouTuber here. Anyway, the game was underway, and for the entire first half and bleeding into the third quarter, the name of the game was defense, with the Cowboys D doing a great job containing the 49ers' inevitable run game, while the 49ers defense also was very effective in stifling Dak Prescott. And even when the 49ers gave the Cowboys some breathing room and the offense got into a small groove, Dak in particular would just make a mistake, missing a read early on, and had the offense stall out on him in very critical moments. Then in the second half, it just continued on. The Cowboys seemingly couldn't break through the 49ers defense, and with every single 49ers HD toss play dialed up, more and more of Jerry Jones deteriorated by the second, until eventually, after the Cowboys' second-to-last drive, which resulted in 2 incomplete passes and a sack, that was it. The 49ers took care of business from there again. The Dallas Cowboys were embarrassed in front of the world, letting the 49ers push them around again, this time losing 12-19. Which leads us to the modern era. Dak Prescott is still the quarterback, Mike McCarthy's the coach, and more importantly, the one character that has stayed with us on this long journey, Jerry Jones, is still the owner / president / general manager / dictator in Dallas. And although all of that cursed stuff about Jerry Jones may have been blown out of proportion, when you look back at the Cowboys, you kind of find a common pattern. Even when they have great years like 2014 or 2007, it seems like those seasons are peppered in with a ton of mid-seasons. And it's been that way ever since the dynasty fell in the 90s. And in the modern era, the Cowboys, one of the most rich history franchises in all of sports, are looked at as nothing more than a laughingstock and have lost all respect around the entire NFL. Anyways,
Damn.
Okay, so
Hell yeah, they
hold
have.
on a minute.
Now let's get to
what
it.
you're
Let's get to
thinking,
a
but
winning.
the answer to the
I know
title
you gonna
of
like this video.
isn't just the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes, okay? Believe it or not,
Fucking
the Kansas City
Chiefs
score
fake
that's
ass,
now
man.
won 2 Super Bowls and counting didn't just pop up
I love
randomly
me some
one
Patty.
year and click behind a Hall of Fame quarterback. Rather, it took
Good.
many years of sucking, a revolving door of players, very controversial risks, the ability to keep going after multiple of the worst tragedies in sports history, and of course a lot of luck to put the Kansas City Chiefs in the position they find themselves in the modern era. And although some characters will prove to be more valuable than others, you don't win 7 straight AFC West titles and make 5 straight AFC Championship appearances without help from guys who deserve a lot more recognition. So without further ado, allow me to dig up the Chiefs' secrets to building a potential NFL
Is this a
dynasty
video or is
from
like
almost
this guy just
The
rambling?
year is 2001,
Video.
where at this point in human history, the Kansas City Chiefs found
The Chiefs and the Cowboys in one video.
No, I picked the I clicked a new video. That video was
Oh.
Last time he
I
stood
see.
on the sidelines in Dick Vermeil, bringing with him the ability for the Chiefs to hit the reset button as a franchise. And a reset was in dire need of happening, as not only was Kansas City coming off a subpar 7-9 campaign in 2000, but in one of the most shocking moments in football history, after the 1999 season concluded, Derek Thomas, the best player to ever play for the Red and White, passed away due to a blood clot. And even just over a year later, Kansas City was still obviously rattled by this tragedy. Still though, this season the Chiefs had a brutal offense led by quarterback Trent Green, who they traded for, and their all-pro duo in Hall of Fame tight end Tony Gonzalez and Priest Holmes, both of which were also brought in by the Chiefs' longtime general manager, Carl Peterson. Then in 2002, the Chiefs slowly improved once more, this time bringing in the human concrete mound that was Willie Rowe. And behind him and others, the Chiefs' offense was arguably the best the NFL had to offer, dropping an unmatched 29.2 points per game. But Kansas City only finished with an 8-8 record due to one of the worst defenses in the NFL and missed the playoffs once again. So here we are in the Dick Vermeil era, where all the pieces were in place, and it seemed like it would only be a matter of time before KC broke through. And to start the 2003 season, the offense picked up right where they left off, with Holmes and Gonzalez carrying as much as they could. But now the defense had held opposing offenses to just over 14 points per game through the first 4 weeks due to newcomer Vaughn Holiday and both D-tackle Ryan Sims and DB Jerome Woods returning from injury to make immediate impacts, turning the Chiefs' defense into one that could be argued as mildly passable. So now, sitting at 4-0, the Chiefs looked ahead to Mike Shanahan's Broncos in Week 5 as the game that would decide their season's trajectory. And after 52 minutes of slogging along, the Chiefs' secret weapon, who gave them the exact boost they needed when they needed, Dante Hall, scored effectively the game-winning touchdown, going for a 93-yard return on a punt. Except not only did he score a touchdown, but this was his 4th straight game of returning a kick or punt for a touchdown.
Bro, how do people
setting an
develop in
NFL
college
record in the
football?
process.
Like, do you
And he
put
wasn't
them
even
in
alone in
games?
making history this year either, as Priest Holmes broke the all-time touchdown record at the time for a running back. Tony Gonzalez came in first in the league in tight end touchdowns, receiving yards, and receptions, and the Kansas City Chiefs
No,
tied their
Ben
most
died.
in franchise history,
Oh,
going
no.
13-3 to
Who?
finish the year out strong.
Ben Herbstreit.
With a first-round bye, the Chiefs
The pupper.
waited to see who they were going to annihilate with patience, as at home, they were immortal, not losing a single game at Arrowhead since Week 7 of 2002. So, simply put, this team was a nuclear-level threat. Nobody has been able to contain the greatest show on turf in red. The only way to beat them was to outgun them. And the man who stepped into the ring to take on the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs was the MVP of the NFL, Peyton Manning, and the Indianapolis Colts, a team who will prove to be the most dangerous villain in this treacherous adventure. These were the two most explosive offenses in the league. So to start the game, both sides carved each other's defenses alive and torched them to a crisp, with both teams trading jabs until Manning found Reggie Wayne to take a 2-possession lead. So now in the third, the Chiefs found themselves in a sizable manhole. And unfortunately for Kansas City, sort of, this game contained 0 punts to this point, and that pattern would only keep going as Dante Hall's opportunities to strike grew slimmer and slimmer. But then the Colts really dumb and allowed the human joystick to ignite the crowd in Kansas City and return the ensuing kickoff for a massive touchdown. This game was still up in the air. All the Chiefs needed was one singular stop from their defense, but 2003 Peyton Manning simply existed on a higher plane of being, as Manning went right down the field and scored, finishing the game against the Chiefs, pulling off the win 38-31 in Arrowhead, dropping this stat line, which was somehow worse than his stats from his wildcard appearance before this, but this game is hard to even replicate in Madden. An unceremonious defeat for sure, but
They
the
got him
Chiefs
for
had
over
just
300 yards.
perfect
in
bro.
blueprint.
I
They were
heard
led
you.
by a Hall of Fame head coach and a Hall of Fame tight end, and had playmakers all over the offense, giving them the ability to beat any team off of pure scoring volume alone. But although all the pieces were laid out right there on the floor, the time just wasn't right yet, as over the next 2 seasons, all-pro running back Priest Holmes' career quickly succumbed to injuries, while the Chiefs' defense fell right back to the bottom of the league in everything. And after a second straight season of no late January football, Dick Vermeil retired for the second time, this one being permanent, leaving the Kansas City Chiefs without a head coach. To replace Vermeil, the Chiefs brought in former Jets head coach Herm Edwards to see if he could squeeze anything that could be left in the talent jar for this roster. And he did a pretty damn good job, as despite an injury that would rule Trent Green out for 8 games, the Chiefs offense kept up some momentum from their past years, replacing Priest Holmes with his backup Larry Johnson, who blossomed into an all-pro. And along with Tony Gonzalez still, the Chiefs went 9-7 and made the playoffs. And as the 2006 regular season came to a close, the Chiefs' defense was still slightly above average at best and just plain bad at worst. They were encouragingly led by a bunch of young guys who the front office had picked up for the last couple of years, though. So when the Chiefs lined up against Peyton Manning and the Colts once again in the playoffs, at least this time it seemed as if their defense had at least a little bit of a better shot at wounding Peyton Manning than what went down last time. Also, even better, the Colts had allowed opposing teams to rush for over 100 yards on them during every single game in the regular season. So all signs pointed to all-pro running back Larry Johnson having the day of his career. But as the game began, it was the complete opposite, as Johnson was 100% held in check, with both sides trading field goals for most of the first half. And you know, the Chiefs could have taken control of this game so easily too, with the perfect opportunity getting hand-delivered to them when Peyton Manning threw a pick that went inside the 10-yard line on the return, where not only could the the Chiefs not capitalize on picking up 9 yards, but then they proceeded to botch a 23-yard field goal. Then, after another Peyton Manning interception before halftime, the Chiefs were just too damn stubborn and stuck to their philosophy of the suck, going 3 and out, doing nothing in the process. Eventually, the Colts got things together somehow and basically watched the Chiefs stab themselves to death in the second half, taking care of business 23-8, leaving Kansas City to cope with their own misery for yet another year. Now, the players still thought that this core could actually make some real noise in the AFC, but Carl Peterson and the rest of the front office seemingly thought otherwise. And a month or so after their playoff defeat, the Chiefs went straight to the media and said, hey, we don't want Trent Green anymore. Now that Dick Vermeil's gone, we just don't like him anymore, so he's up for grabs. And eventually, over the summer, the Chiefs finally found a partner and dealt their franchise quarterback of 6 years in Trent Green to the Miami Dolphins. But the problems only began at quarterback, with Larry Johnson also stirring the pot a little too much. Basically, he wanted more money than he was being offered and held out for most of training camp until Carl Peterson actually caved in and handed their now 28-year-old running back an illogical 5-year, $43 million contract with $19 million guaranteed, the most guaranteed money ever handed out by anyone in Kansas City. So now that they just handed a bag and a half to an old, broken running back with a bit of a domestic issue, the Chiefs watched their budding defensive end Jared Allen get more and more pissed with his situation in KC, and even scarier, he was set up to be a free agent after the 2007 season concluded, and his return to Kansas City became less and less convincing when he found himself punished by Roger for a little joyride, and, you know, he sold his house, too, and didn't buy another one, so that probably means something. And with all that going on, believe it or not, when the season began, the Chiefs were terrible, as the Larry Johnson contract immediately chopped him in the ass when he got a boo-boo in Week 9 and missed the season with a right foot injury. And with the Chiefs rotating quarterbacks between Damon Huard and Brody Croyle throughout the season, even Tony Gonzalez couldn't keep the boat afloat, and the Chiefs finished the year with a 4-12 record. Then, over the next 2 years, things just kept spiraling out of control. That vision off a revolutionary offense with Vermeil, Gonzalez, Holmes, and others was straying farther and farther away by the day, with Jared Allen and Tony G both getting traded for draft capital in consecutive seasons. And although he did his duty, Chiefs general manager Carl Peterson had seen all he needed to see and walked the plank on his own terms. And after 3 years of free-falling, the Chiefs had become one with the Rams, Lions, and Raiders, winning barely double-digit games in 3 years' time. So it was so obvious this roster was in desperate need of a massive shakeup. This is Todd Haley. You've probably guessed by the jacket there, but he ended up coaching the Chiefs, and his time in Kansas City was interesting, but not interesting enough. And after being brought in prior to the 2009 season by new general manager Scott Pioli, he almost instantaneously became known as a grade A asshole in Kansas City and lost the locker room in record time. But despite his coaching ineptitudes, the Chiefs had slowly begun rebuilding something resembling a core, as although they recently whiffed horribly on Glenn Dorsey with the 5th pick in 2008 and Tyson Jackson with the 3rd pick in 2009, but they eventually picked things up again, drafting All-Pro running back Jamal Charles in 2008, using their pick they received in the Jared Allen trade for that, and later future All-Pro safety Eric Berry in the 2010 draft. In a little over 2 seasons on the job, Haley racked up 19 wins and 26 losses. Basically just mediocrity itself. And in 2010, when the Chiefs had a 10-6 record, Haley rode a Pro Bowl year from quarterback Matt Castle and an All-Pro campaign from Jamal Charles to a playoff berth and subsequent first-round exit in 2010, keeping that playoff win drought going. But then 1 year later, with both of those players and the young Eric Berry combining to play just 13 games, Todd Haley was fired after a 5-8 start in 2011, with Kansas City promoting defensive coordinator Romeo Crennel to interim head coach. Nobody was truly sure if Crennel would actually hold on to the head coaching position after the offseason, but to his credit, the Chiefs finished strong under him last season, almost going undefeated in his 3 games coaching, defeating the 13-0 Green Bay Packers in Week 15, and were a blocked field goal away from beating the Raiders too. But if there were any questions, they were answered when in early January, the Chiefs made Romeo Crennel their 12th coach in franchise history and signed Crennel to a 3-year contract, thus beginning depressing season in Chiefs history, and unfortunately, not even in a fun way at all. Before the 2012 season began, this year was set up to be the final test for general manager Scott Pioli, as with allegations about him being overly controlling to the point where employees were convinced their phones were tapped to test their loyalty or something, I guess. Unless they started winning right now, Scott Pioli was going to be done in Kansas City, and even that might not have been enough. But luckily for all the Chiefs fans who wanted Scott gone, I guess, the 2012 Chiefs started the season out on a horrible note and instantly became contenders for the worst Chiefs team in franchise history.
Bucks out of the gun. Freeman fires. Is caught.
Fucking Trent Richardson.
1 through 9, KC found a way to
Former
never
Colt.
hold a single lead at any point in regulation at any time. But they actually won a game in week 3, even with that fact being true. But sitting at a 1-7 record while being this unwatchable on the field, Chiefs fans decided that if change wasn't going to happen inside the organization, then they would have to do it themselves, with the organization known as Save Our Chiefs being founded by some random-ass dudes who had the money to literally hire planes to fly banners encouraging the Chiefs to fire Scott Pioli and bench Matt Castle, among other things, go over the Chiefs stadium. Insane. And the Chiefs didn't stop there either, encouraging people to wear all black to their matchup against Cincinnati in Week 11 to keep pushing for some more form of change in the front office. But even with all the valiant fan efforts, at the very least, they still had to grit their teeth and tough the season out with Pioli and Cornell. But all of that disappointment and anger was put on hold when the Kansas City Chiefs, the organization that already dealt with the premature death of Derek Thomas, had yet another horrible tragedy strike them, when on December 1st of 2012, Chiefs linebacker Javon Belcher murdered his girlfriend Cassandra Perkins, shooting her at least 9 times, and then fled the scene. Belcher, with a blood alcohol concentration well over the legal limit, requested a personal
That's
meeting
crazy.
with Scott Pioli and Romeo Cornell.
What?
Once the three met each other, in the
Shooting your
Chiefs
girlfriend
parking
with an
lot,
alcohol
among
level
other
like that.
people, at about
Oh,
8
yeah.
a.m. on December 1st, Javon Belcher was dead. He ended up taking his own life in front of his general manager and head coach. Forgive me for trying to rush that segment, but it's just a lot.
It's fucking
This
depressing.
situation
Holy
just
shit.
made everyone forget about football for the time being, as not only were Scott and Romeo scarred by watching a man they once cared about pull the trigger on himself in front of them, but in Jamal Charles' case, the face of the franchise, the running back who Chiefs fans had put every ounce of hope in over the last couple of years, was probably the most affected out of anyone on the team, because the woman that Belcher killed was Jamal's wife's cousin, who was only introduced to Belcher by Jamal's own doing. So the amount of grief he was feeling at this
That's
time
tough.
cannot be understated. So that's the
Yeah, that's
2012
tough.
Chiefs
That's
season
tough.
right there. They finished their season from hell, going 2-14, and now had no choice but to wash their hands completely of their past, firing both Scott Pioli and Romeo Cornell for good, looking ahead for a better Chiefs future. But before we get back into the video, I gotta tell you about this video sponsor, Magic Spoon. For me, when I was a wee lad, I loved me a good old bowl of cereal and Cartoon Network in the morning. But as I got older and started getting huge gains,
No.
I'll try it out. And who better to I'll try it out?
What are you talking about? We don't watch ads over here.
Checkout for $5 off.
Through
So a
the
huge
walls,
thanks to
through the
Magic Spoon
walls.
for sponsoring this video. And with that, let's get back to the video. And who better to turn the Chiefs into winners than the hottest coach on the market in terms of success and physical attributes?
Big Red!
Kansas City Chiefs hired
Big fucking red.
Andy Reid,
Big
the
Red.
master of clock management, as the Chiefs' new head coach, as well as former Packers director of football operations John Dorsey, to become the new general manager. But luckily for the new guy in town, Andy Reid was not actually inheriting a terrible roster. I mean, yeah, although the Chiefs only won 2 games last year, this team had a total of 6 Pro Bowlers on it, all of which were in the prime of their careers or getting to that point. And just around the corner was the 2013 NFL Draft, where the Chiefs got the #1 overall pick and had even more opportunity to stack up the talent. But the 2013 NFL Draft was weird, like really abnormally weird. Nobody truly knew who the Chiefs were going to take at 1. As some thought offensive tackle Luke Jokel, others thought they were confident they would grab Oregon's Deion Jordan, or dare I say, Geno Smith. But the Chiefs went in their own direction, and the first pick in the Andy Reid, John Dorsey era was offensive tackle Eric Fisher, who was definitely miles better than anything around that area of the draft. But still, this selection wasn't even close to their best pickup in this draft.
The Kels Daddy.
The Chiefs drafted Cincinnati tight end Travis Kelce in the 3rd round, a guy who had mild character concerns, but was obviously very talented and seemed like a great fit in the Andy Reid offensive scheme. So just like that, in 1 year, the Chiefs